Praise be Jesus Christ, now and forever. Many, many years ago, I was staying with a friend in a small Italian village. One of the elderly villagers died, and we attended his funeral mass, which, as usual there, was celebrated within 3 days of his death. It was an unusual experience to hear as the coffin was being taken from the church to the place of burial, the entire congregation bursting into applause. It's not normal, certainly in non-Catholic cultures, for such a thing to happen. It's obviously in some ancient way a sign of faith in the resurrection, that despite the human sadness and loss of a loved one, death has been defeated. We come as we move through these great 50 days of the Easter season to the essential drama of our faith, and in a sense, the deepest question of the depth of that faith in the resurrection of Jesus. We can hear the cry of St. Paul, "O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory?" and be buoyed up with the fire of those words and strengthened by their power. And then someone we love dies, perhaps too early or unexpectedly. Without a doubt, there's an obvious and very deep experience of loss with physical death. The Lord himself wept at the death of his friend Lazarus. There's no shame in that experience of grief. Surely this is because, as we believe, death was not and is not part of God's original plan for humanity. That's why, to put it plainly, the resurrection is everything. Benedict XVI wrote that the resurrection answers the cry for unending life, which is almost in the DNA of every human. That's why we continue to hear of ridiculous experiments to try to extend human life, promises of different elixirs of immortality, and sadly the terrible fear so poorly responded to by the Church, engendered by the COVID crisis. Pope Benedict wrote so movingly and powerfully, "God exists. This is the real message of Easter." And that the resurrection of Jesus, the defining doctrine of Christianity, is the triumphant answer to the question of which really reigns, death or life. Faith, not human sight, faith in the resurrection, despite the pain of physical loss, answers that question. Life reigns. Life is the victor because Christ is the victor. Nothing else can explain how so many Christians through the centuries have endured death with faith and fortitude and even joy. That is because, as the writer of an ancient Paschal homily wrote, that the sacrifice of the true Pasch, Jesus, is the beginning of eternal life for us. Pause and ponder that stupendous statement. Jesus, his sacrifice, his death, and his resurrection is the beginning of eternal life for us. The Christian faith is that, because of Christ's death and resurrection through our baptism, we are already living eternal life. I'm reminded of a character in the extraordinary series about Easy Company in World War II, Band of Brothers. One of the officers, I forget his name, is regarded with awe and a certain degree of fear by the men because he seems unafraid, going into the thick of battle without caution. At one point he tells a soldier the reason, a slightly terrifying and bleak explanation. The only way to get through the fighting is to realize that you are already dead. For the believer in the triumph of the resurrection, it is the exact opposite. The only way to get through the battle of human life, with all its pains and struggles, is to realize that you will never die. Brethren, rejoice, be perfected, be comforted, be of the same mind, be at peace, and the God of peace and love will be with you.